friends. So uh, I know Alex. What's the other name?
Dan,
Dan. Hi, Dan. What do
how
you
are
do?
you? I run small businesses, start and run small businesses, go from 0 to 1.
Okay, so you're co-running this with Alex or
Yeah,
something?
yeah. We've been doing this for what, 5 years now, or what's the
Yeah, I guess so. 5 years.
four or
For
5 years?
2014. Yeah, 5 years.
Yeah.
So can you? I mean, I read a little bit of background on Board Game Co. and read that like in 2012, this is kind of Alex's like in his basement. He had 500 games. He didn't play most of them and just started trading them and or it was like an auction or something. Moved to BGG. Then can you just give me the whole origin story because it was pretty fascinating to
Sure,
read
sure.
about.
So I'll start in from where it started with me, and then I'll
Yeah.
I'll pass it off to Dan from when he
Great.
joined.
Great. Okay.
But the long story short is, like Dan said, I played Catan way back in the year, way back. I don't remember how far back, 2010, 2007 maybe. I don't know. But and then a few years later, I played Carcassonne. That was my second game, and that was great. Then I played Small World and Stone Age within a period of 3 months from a friend of mine, and I was like, oh wow, that's like there's actually more of these games that are actually fun. And I'm a little bit obsessive in my habits and hobbies and whatnot. And so I went on to Cool Stuff Inc., placed a $300 order, and got a ton of games. I think I went to eBay and bought a few other games. I remember I bought Jambo. I bought like Catan, Rivals for Catan. I bought a bunch of small stuff. Pandemic, Casa Burgundy. There were a whole bunch of these first purchases. And then I discovered a store called One Eye Jock that sells Ding and Dent games, and
Mm.
I just went crazy. I just started buying every month. I was spending $300 to $500 a month on games that I was not playing. They were hitting up my shelf.
Are you researching these at all? Or are you just like you see they're 5 stars and just buy them, or what do you
No,
do?
no, no. I don't remember the level of research I had at that point. I remember at one point I discovered the Dice Tower, but I didn't buy anything without in some to some degree getting a feel for what the gameplay was like. I don't think I was nearly as knowledgeable or as obsessive in as I am nowadays, but to some extent I definitely looked into everything. But then, yeah, so fast forward about a year, and I have roughly 400 games on my shelf, of which I've played maybe 50 to 100. And I decided to basically run an auction to try to sell some of these games and just buy the next ones, because something that I'm sure any decent gamer, decent is a relative term, but knows the feeling of obsessively hunting down game X, getting it, acquiring it, and then just suddenly 6 months later you're looking at game Y and game X isn't even mentally on your radar anymore. You never
Mm-hmm.
played it, to keep that in mind. Just you got it, and you're good. Now you move on. So I ran an auction, and I discovered that I actually ended up making money in the auction because I always bought things on sale. I was always trading, and I was always trying to be money conscious. And I was just trying to like turn my unplayed games into more games, but I actually made money. At that point, I basically decided to, and this is a scary moment for me, but I basically decided to open up my entire collection for trading. I set up my entire collection, even the ones I want, except for the ones I've set aside as keeping, but everything else I haven't played is being available for trade. And I
Hmm.
started basically, and I said, and at the same time, I said I'm willing to take anyone's games.
So why did you open your entire collection? Why not just have like what were you feeling at that point?
Great question. Somewhere along the trading path, I noticed that there was this problem that people have this overlap. Like so person X has 3 games for trade, person Y has 4 games for trade, and then they're trying to find an overlap between their collections in order to trade. And the problem is if you just look at a general person's collection, the actual overlap on a small collection is sometimes it's one title, sometimes it's 2 titles. Unless
Hmm.
you have a significant volume of games for trade and wanting in trade, you're just statistically unlikely to have that overlap. And that makes for an inefficient trade because you're paying $10, $15 to ship a game that you're only trading for a $30, $40 game. So you're losing a lot on the shipping, and it's just an inefficient system.
Hmm.
And so I had the idea to open up my entire collection to anything and say I want everything, giving me a greater degree of overlap with people, which is the value proposition. So you're Trent, you have a collection for trade. Alex, I have 400 games for trade, all of them popular titles, and I also want five. I don't know. I want 2,000 titles. So there's a decent amount of overlap in our collection. But the flip side is I hardballed you on the value with the premise that you're getting a good trade by saving on shipping on a larger trade, but I'm going to hardball you. And when I first started this, I was doing this as an independent user, just trying to use my collection to leverage a better collection for myself. And so it's just pretty simple. I was like, well, this is the value I want. If it's a value proposition you see, great. If you don't, that's okay too. No harm, no foul. And there definitely were some hiccups along the way as I kind of transitioned from a person to a business, because people have a harder time buying into the idea that an uneven trade is worthwhile to them with another person. This is a premise of fairness at play. Fair play is always like, a concept in people's minds. It's only more as a business that you get this. People have more of an understanding and recognition that there's a cost and an expense to the value you're providing, and so there has to be some sort of profit margin. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. Anyways, I did that for a year or two and slowly grew my 400 games in my basement to around 1,500.
So over the course of that year and a half, like how many trades do you think you did?
I have the data somewhere, but I don't know offhand. I mean, just going by our own numbers now, it's probably in the range of 1,000 or so. I remember I'm trying to.
I would guess you were doing one a day on average based on how we started, the rate at which we started.
Gotcha, it could be.
On
So yeah, so maybe closer to around 700 or so. It's somewhere. It's over 500 and less than 1,000. Somewhere
Keep
in
in
that range.
mind that these trades, when he uses the word trade, or we talk about trade in this discussion, it's not one for one, which is the vast majority of trades that go on any given day around the world. These are many for many. So these are not uncomplicated trades.
Yeah. And so, so that lasted for a while. And then occasionally, and then part of this process is I had tremendous amounts of shipping costs, as you can imagine, just dealing with this. And so the process was I would trade. And then like every 2 months, I'd run an auction on surplus stock to basically pay for all the shipping expenses that was occurring. And for a while, I grew a business that had a small amount of pocket money and a lot of games. And it was just a fun little engine. I was building my own little Tableau builder, engine builder system, but with real life. And then in around 2013, at some point, is where Dan
I
entered the
knocked on
picture.
his door. So what happened was I moved to Cleveland, Ohio, where this guy lives, in around 2012, and I had a shelf of, I don't know, how many would you say? A couple hundred? I don't know.
Yeah.
Couple hundred games, which was a fraction of my collection. I had moved from North Carolina, and I should say that I had been since '01 in the business of storing hundreds of thousands of boxes. I'm in the record storage business, so I manage a warehouse with boxes with barcodes on it, and we put things on the shelf and off the shelf, pallet racking like any large warehouse. And at the same time, in 1995, I should start by saying I walked into a store in Richmond, Virginia called One Eyed Jock. That happens to be where I'm from. So that's just an odd coincidence, very odd. But I walked into that store in the town that I grew up in as a bachelor and a guy who had played a lot of bridge in college, and said, hey, I think this new thing called computer games is deeply antisocial. I'm staying up past midnight alone in my room playing, who knows, 12-year-old Russian boy. Who knows who you're playing? And that I was into a more social thing. And so the guy says, well, this seems to be selling pretty well. And he puts this game called Settlers of Catan in my hand. And it turned out to be a profound influence on me. And I corralled as many geeks as I could to play games, and soon after started a family, and literally was waiting for my children to age, as I'm sure Alex is doing right now, so that they could play certain titles with me. And so literally from age 2 and 4, I was buying the Habba games, which I found frankly very strategically satisfying and beautiful and delicious to play with my girls, and they grew up subjected to a fanatical game playing father like my partner Alex here is with his children today. Literally, some parents force their kids to be good baseball players, and we are forcing our kids. I have forced my children to be good game players. Fortunately, they have matured into fine young women, of which I'm proud, and don't share my fanaticism, but they do share my facility with the games. Anyway, I'm cut. So literally my head is down playing games with my young girls and not thinking about the hobby. I'm exploiting this website called Board Game Geek to, like everybody does, to figure out what to buy and what to play.
Speaking of which,
And
I'll note, Dan, I think you're what member are you?
no,
You're
I was
like
going to get to that.
400.
Yes, I was going to get to that. So I'll put a pin in that for a second. So I have no idea. I'm just going on, buying games, trying to curate for myself, acquiring them, paying cash, whatever, using sites that are no longer in existence to buy my games on the cheap over the internet. But for those who may have heard of Boulder Games out of Atlanta, it should rest in peace. But that really fed my hobby for the first 10 years, probably. Anyway, I move up to Cleveland, and we had lots of dinner guests. And every time we'd have dinner guests, and Alex and I live a few streets away. And so people would look at the shelves and say, "What are those things?" And I would explain that they're these designer games. And, every now and then somebody would say, there's another oddball in the neighborhood who likes these things. And like any enthusiast, if you're really into something, if you liked wine and somebody said, "Hey, I know a guy who likes wine," you might say, "Well, he doesn't like wine like I like wine." You know what I'm saying? So it took me a while, but one weekend I walked over to Alex's house and I knocked on the door, and this redheaded guy greets me and smiles and says, "Hey, people have been telling me about you." And then, I kid you not, the next thing out of his mouth was, "I just want you to know I'm a little OCD." And I said to myself, "Well, that's interesting." I said to him, "That's interesting. How so?" And he said, "Well, come downstairs." And so we went down to his basement, and I'm staring at 1,600. Well, I didn't know. I'm just staring at board games, floor to ceiling, on shelves. And I said, "Wow, this is a nice collection." I've been in the hobby for since '95, so whatever that would be, 18 years, and I have about 400 or 500 games in a warehouse in Charlotte. And he said, "Well, I've been doing this for 12 months, and there's 1,600 games in this room." And I said, "Oh no, I know what you mean by OCD." And that it might have ended there, but then he said something that was really interesting, and he said, "And they're worth a lot of money." And I said, and he was specific, and I said, I kind of just was jarring to me because literally in 18 years in the hobby, I really hadn't thought about the value of these games on my shelf. And I questioned him. I said, "What do you mean it can't be that much?" And he says, "Oh no, that's 17.25, and that's $19.50, and that." And so, first of all, I realized I'm dealing with somebody whose head is in the game, no pun intended. And but I still, questioned the whole. It was really jarring to me, this whole idea that these things that I just like, the books on one shelf, that they would have a value other than the value that they give you spiritually or what have you. Because these have been some of the best times of my life around the table playing these games, and like I'm sure everybody in the hobby feels, and so you have almost an emotional feeling about some of these things, and it wasn't normal for me to think of them in terms of value. But then he said, so then he explained to me what he just explained to you, how he's been doing this thing in his basement. "Oh," I said, "you spent that much money, tens and tens of thousands of dollars on games?" And then he said, "Oh no, I only spent a few $100." And then he explains what he just explained to you, this way of trading up, so to speak. And I thought that was really cool. And then he said also what he said, which is, "I put some money in my pocket as well every month." I said, "Now I understood the trading, the bartering part, but I don't understand the cash generation." And he said, "Well, I sell uh, some of these games when I trade up. When I trade 2 games for 5 games, I now have 3 games that I didn't have before." And so some of them make me a more attractive counterparty in a trade, and some of them I liquidate. And so, anyway, again, birds of a feather. We started playing games a lot together, and
Well, then the next step there is that we just basically compared notes, and we were both interested in each other's company, both from a gaming standpoint as well as from an entrepreneurial standpoint. In both cases, Dan's been doing it a lot longer than I have, and in both cases, I win a lot more games. But what's it called?
We'll have to check on that.
But fast forward roughly a year, and I lost my job at. I was a purchaser at the time for a local food distribution company, and I lost my job in late 2014. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start looking for another job. But in the meantime, I have some time, I have some energy. Let me try to talk. Something Dan and I had talked about over the years, but never really solidified, is the idea of actually partnering up. taking advantage of his warehouse, his facilities, a lot of the other strengths that he has. Like you've got the feel for already. I'm more of a numbers and programming and computers kind of guy, and Dan is a lot more the
I call it
networking and
forest and trees.
yeah,
So,
exactly. So there was both in terms of the warehousing, the existing business, and our areas of specialty, specialization and whatnot. We had talked about partnering up, and so in
but I do want to just
2014,
mention a funny conversation that you might not.
go
We were
ahead.
sitting, you and Rena, his wife, were sitting on their couch, and I'm across from them. And, I said, I asked the question, by any chance, do you guys need more space? And out they look at each other, and he says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, number one, you have more choking hazards in this house than any city." And he had at the time two little ones crawling around, and since then has had a couple
Two
more.
more.
And then number two, I would think your wife would want her basement back with these little babies. Number three, I run this business with lots of, we put boxes very specifically on shelves and have to specifically pull them off, and we have the software and etc. And so that was kind of the genesis conversation, which I always thought was funny and true. And he and I packed up 1,600 titles onto a U-Haul and drove them down I-77 from Cleveland to Charlotte, where they've remained, and now they number over 11,000 on the shelf as we speak. And
Yeah, so that's, I mean, ultimately that's the origin story. A lot more things have happened since then. We can happily go into it. There's a lot of things we've done. There's a lot of features we've added. It's always a delicate balance in terms of, I mean, ultimately we're two people, and we have employees as well. We have 3 or 4 employees, some part time, some full time. But it's always. I'm getting a call. Let me hang up that noise. Apologies. What's it called? Yeah, so we're growing a business that on the one hand is large enough to justify the continued involvement, but at the same time it's an experiment and a process for both of us. We're constantly learning, constantly adjusting to our needs, to the needs of our customers, to the needs of the community in general. And it's an interesting path. It's an interesting road so far, and it's going to continue being interesting.
Very cool. Are you guys paying yourselves currently? Are you actually, is this your full-time job?
No. Well,
neither
sorry, go
of
ahead.
us is it a full-time job, but we do pay ourselves and lots of other people as well. So it's a business. I coach entrepreneurial CEOs in managing their attention. It's one of the companies that I have, and find it this is basically all we talk about, is minimizing our day-to-day involvement in anything that we do so we can pay more attention to our families and frankly playing games. We both love to play games, so we're trying to work on the business rather than in it and design it that way.
Okay. So
Yeah, and then for me, it's what's it called? My day job at roughly the same time when I was growing this thing after I left my last job. I got a job at an e-commerce company, building websites for e-commerce, which shockingly enough has some overlap in what we're doing here as well.
right.
And yeah, it's constantly a challenge between. I mean, thank God I love both of these things, and they both take up my time, they both take up my energy, and they're both fascinating to me in different ways. One's my hobby and the source of a lot of I guess happiness or whatnot. But the flip side is anyone who's tried running a gaming store knows we do this because we love it. We don't do this because this is where we saw the big bucks. Hopefully there are big bucks, and hopefully there will be big bucks. But at the end of the day, this is something that I hope very much for it to grow to a point where it actually can justify being a full-time thing for me. But right now, it's something I love, and it's something I keep growing. And we do take a paycheck, but it's not anyone who's getting into the gaming business, do it because you love it. Don't do it for the money.
Yeah. Is this like going to full-time? Is that coming like in months or in years? Like what's your expectation?
It's not impossible.
It's hard to know.
It is hard to know.
It's very hard
a
to
year
know.
ago, I would not have guessed. I would not have guessed we've 10x'd in 4 years. Let's put it that way. And the customer base continues to just grow. We have a huge percentage of the trades that we conduct every day are with returning traders, which means that they just like the experience and the user experience. We ain't even gotten started yet in terms of the user experience. 4 or 5 years ago, it was like Cro-Magnon, and today it's circa 1980, and yet still people like what we're doing and have found value in that trading mechanism. Trent, have you taken advantage of it, or do you know?
Uh, I haven't used it at all. I'd love to hear a quick, brief overview of it.
I don't know. Yeah, could you do a screen share and maybe use a? I don't know. You want to use my?
Sure, no, I
I
can
don't
share
know.
my screen. One second, I got something here. Let me share my screen. Board Game Traders. But yeah, so Dan means offhand, it's in general a lot of these things people do in board games too. Here, I'm gonna request share my screen here. A lot of these things people do in board games in order to, I guess, grow their collection can be pretty obscene. I mean, how much do you know about math trades?
I know a little bit about math trades
Yeah.
and the complexity and the amazingness of it.
Yeah, so with math trades, I know that there's other sites along the road or whatnot. There's other sites that do trading or math trades or different features for board gaming, and it's surprising how much work and energy has to go into them. These aren't things people can just wake up. It's not like a store where you just hop online and buy something. There's
Hmm.
lots of energy involved, and on Board Game Geek, trading is as well as it's messy, it's complicated, and you don't really know what you're doing until someone shows you what to do. And so we put together an app. I wanted to try to pull up a username from someone who's currently a trader. Let's see. This guy seems like a good one. Okay. So we put together a bit of an app. It still has bugs. This is more of a proof of concept when we put it together. And keep in mind when we put it
So I'm
together.
just seeing your Chrome right now. Are you opening up
Yes.
other apps?
Oh no, just this one app. You see the loading your games thing?
No, just the first screen.
Oh, interesting. Your screen sharing's paused. I don't know why.
Hmm.
Resume share. Sorry about that. I was
I'm
punching in.
seeing our, yeah. Okay.
Here,
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Okay.
sorry, I'll start again because apparently my screen sharing is paused. But yeah, so this is something we put together as a proof of concept, and we also did it at a time when we were not profitable and had no extra money, so it was a very limited budget. And that's why it has bugs, it has issues, and this goes back to Dan's point. Even with the bugs and the issues, 75% of our trades come through this. Our users generally find this a much easier interface to work with.
But
The short
no,
version,
actually, the point I was making was not that. It was that 75% of our trades are actually from returning traders.
yeah, I mean, no, I recognize both of those are true. Both those
Yeah.
numbers are true. Most of our trades are from returning traders, and most of our trades come through this app. But the short version is you click a game. You know, you can pause it to see what the values are.
Well,
Whether you can go
you're
ahead.
going a little fast for, I
Sure.
think. So
No, yeah, that's fair.
what he did was he typed in his BGG username,
Mhm.
which you could do, Trent, and it would pull up if you've entered your collection into BGG, and and maybe even designated some available for trade of your collection, or some of games that are not in your collection but that you want. It's going to suck all that out of BGG.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then it's going to make a match with the right hand side, which is the games in our collection that you have said you want.
That makes sense.
And then the numbers you see on the right are values, relative values. That's our own kind of proprietary system for those titles. And so
Yep.
you would just select what you want, and then you would click that little orange button up top, and it said, this is, you propose to trade these, we propose to trade these, and then you're going to send it, and that will get you into our system, and we resolve it very quickly. And so there's really nothing like it out there that is so that removes the friction like this.
And keep in mind, we still feel there's still a tremendous amount of friction.
Tremendous way to go, but this is a tremendous leap over where we started,
Current options, yeah.
which frankly made me cry when I first saw it. Like, I was like, people really want to do this? And sure enough, those of us who are into it have games on our shelves that perhaps our spouse doesn't share our affection for, or a
Right.
roommate or whatever. And so they are space hogs. And so it seems to be something people want.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like even when, especially if they have to fight through the system and the bugs and the issues that you see, like that's just declaring how valuable this is and how much people actually want it.
Yeah, something. I mean, one of the things that attracted Dan to the business when we first started is that the amount of hoops people have to jump through, and yet they're still interested. There's still a customer base, and a growing customer base, and a repeat customer base at that.
Mhm.
I mean, people want games, and people want cheaper games because they want more games, and they want ways to turn all those other games that they aren't using, aren't playing, have moved on from. They want more effective, more efficient, faster ways to turn those into something that they can benefit from.
One
And
of the
people's
ways to think about it is the GameStop model, Trent. It's kind of like
Right.
that, the equivalent of that for board games.
Yeah, I mean, right now there's no mass. I mean, with the few exceptions, with ourselves, with Noble Knight, with your local retail store that might have a buy-in program for used games, and most don't. There's very few options for people to actually get rid of their games in an efficient manner. It's basically comes down to user trading, or going on eBay or the Board Game Geek marketplace and selling them off one at a time, which tends to be frustrating, a hassle. People don't want to spend as much because of shipping, and then you have to package and ship each thing yourself. It's just, I mean, to the point that, I mean, Dan's a great use case of this. Where, I mean, what did you ever do with your unplayed games until Board Game Co came along?
That's correct. And I happily use the service. I was not a customer for this service, and now I really I see the volume. Frankly, I wasn't sure it was a business. I had to, I mean, he was sure, but I had to look at it hard for 12 to 24 months, and then I just saw the kind of the growing user base, and this high level of returning users. Like once people see that we're a trusted counterparty in a trade, like they're going to get what they're expecting in the condition that they're expecting. And I don't know how many successful trades have we conducted at this point, 7,000 something.
Yeah, I mean, well over 7,000 at this point. It's I'd have to
So
pull up, but yeah.
and I think there's been, are we maybe in double digits, maybe 11 negative comments or something like that on the over 5 years or something like that. So the world is perceiving a value proposition here.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your screen, Alex.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of other things like right now with something Dan hasn't really touched upon, but something we're slowly in the works on, and it is slowly, but is we're hopefully putting together an actual app to facilitate this trading even further. But same idea. It's just an idea of another thing to remove the friction, to make it easier, and find all those touch points that we see people having issues with, both from the technology we're providing as well as just general problems in the trading hobby, and try to streamline them, remove any and all friction as much as possible. Just make this a better experience for everyone.
By the way, I forgot to tell the anecdote, which I don't know who it makes seem as the bigger geek, him or me. But one day out of the blue, he says, your member number like 400 and something on Board Game Geek. And I said, no, actually, I had no idea. I don't. And how'd you even find that out? You stalker, you. And anyway, he did figure out how to stalk my thing on and see what user number I was. And apparently, I joined the Geek in 2001 and was number 400 and something. And I was like, well, why is that even significant? He said, well, it's 2013 now, and I'm member number 1.5 million or something.
Yeah, I was
now
like 512,000, and they've crossed 1 million by now.
Oh, I think they've crossed 2 million by now.
Oh, but yeah, I mean, we had this conversation like 2 years ago, so yeah. But the hobby's growing.
The hobby is really growing, and I think even new game sales, I mean, are 25% year-over-year growth for the past number of years. So we're very bullish on it, and we happen to love it. I mean, to do something you love is a joy, and we get a kick out, from the new hotness. Just like everybody else. I've watched some of your videos, and I'm interested in your opinions of some of the things you've said. Everybody, we all want to hear, more about what we should be playing. So.
Now, are you guys going to be getting into new board game sales and stuff? Because it's hard to I want to trade my stuff usually for the new hotness. Like that's the desire I have. I'm always buying the newest
Sure.
things.
So it's yes and no. So the yes and no part is, well, everything with me is yes and no. I don't give simple answers. But
my world.
Exactly. So what we do right now is we have the problem is we have a limited budget because a big part our unique advantage is new games. Meaning you can't compete with Cool Stuff Inc. and Miniature Marker as a startup when in doing what they're doing. If you do the exact same thing as the big guys, they're getting better discounts, they have better infrastructure, better systems. You're not going to be able to last if all you're doing is starting up and trying to do what someone else is doing.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to focus on the areas that we have to focus on our strengths, our areas that we can outpace someone else. And granted, that does mean we have lacks in other areas. So what the condensed version of that is right now most of our budget goes towards facilitating the current operation we have in place, facilitating trades, facilitating purchasing used games, and trying to give people not necessarily as much access to all the regular hotness, but access to a very decent collection of games, thousands and thousands of titles, many of them new hotness, many of them, last year's games, but at incredible prices and ways to get them that don't involve, just spending cash the same way you would at any other store. The remainder of that is that we do have a budget that we do put towards new games. So what we do is we specifically buy what we perceive as the hottest games every single month, and we add those to our collection. And the downside of that is while we do that, people tend to snatch them up pretty quickly because we allocate them towards trading first. Again, we're trying to focus on our competitive advantage, recognizing that sometimes that means we don't have a game on the shelf for sale.
So we would rather offer those new and shrink games to you for your used games than sell them at a very slim margin competing against those big guys.
Yeah, I mean, people don't necessarily always realize this unless they own a store, but the margins are thin. And especially in a world where you have to offer free shipping at $100 just to be competitive, somebody buys 3 of those games and, you make $14 on the sale and end up eating $12.50 in free shipping and credit card fees and who knows what. And the margins on this can be incredibly slim until you build up that extra level of discount that you get for spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. But yeah, so the shorter version of your answer comes down to yes, we buy new games. Yes, we offer them for trade and people can snatch them up. We do ask a premium for them because spending cash on them and because they're hot and everyone wants them. But yeah, and in terms of future plans, I mean, we continuously allocate portions of our profit every month towards buying games, and along with all the other ideas and avenues we have to continuously grow the business, continuing to develop and add more and more revenue towards new games as part of it.
And you guys just, I don't know how recent it was, but you have a subscription to rent games now. Tell me about that.
Sure.
So we were approached, I think, like 3 years ago or maybe more from a group out of Indianapolis that had started a company that was like the Netflix of board games, which Netflix in the early days, not Netflix today,
Right.
where you would get shipped a certain amount of, you would go online, designate a queue of games that you want, and you would be shipped those games. And then as you could choose to buy them once you've tried them at a reduced cost. I think they had that feature. I believe they had that feature. And then you return them and get other games in your queue, all for a monthly recurring fee, just like Netflix used to work in the old days when you were in diapers, probably. But they got out of they came to us to see about a merger because the inventory management was taxing, which it is in this business. It's not a trivial part of the business. In fact, it's well over half of our cost structure deals with dealing with physical stuff and shipping and receiving and quality control and all that. And so we happily merged, and since then we have grown this rental operation, and we have big plans for it into the future. We think bars and hotels and events and even people in their home may have an appetite to try before they buy, as the average price of a new title continues to creep up for the average consumer.
Mm-hmm. So right now, is it a significant part of your revenue, or is it still pretty small?
No, as of right now, it's pretty small. But I mean, to be frank, we haven't marketed it at all. We don't do any of our advertising campaigns at all. We don't focus on it. It's something that we took over and we've been trying to streamline. But it's the constant challenge of trying to grow another branch of the operation without compromising the what we're doing in the trading side and the website and the sales.
And
so
our game nights.
And our game nights. That's very important. So it is the lowest. It's the lowest source of our time and energy. We do have, some small plans to try to add, just to market it, because it's one of those things that as soon as it actually becomes a bigger revenue source, it's easier to find the time for it. But thank God, like we do have a decent subscription base, but in terms of absolute revenue of the business, it's a small thing right now, and we hope it grows.
That does remind me a little bit of what you said earlier, like when you were talking about you're essentially needing to trade for like 30% more, like you're getting the better deal in every trade because you're running this as a business. I saw some posts that are pretty old at this point that people were unhappy with how undervalued their games are. Like, how did you manage the marketing and the PR for that and address that?
Short answer, badly. Yeah, if you go back, one of the nice things, and it's one of those things that's both good and bad. It's the bad is that if you go back and you search around, there are definitely enough of a hullabaloo or whatever you want to call it. There are people have occasionally been upset with the service we were offering, how we were doing it, who we were. The good news is those things tend to have gone down year after year. Every single year, I managed to pivot a little more towards being responsible, polite, diplomatic, seeing things from the other side of the conversation, and both are important. It's very difficult. I mean, as a person, when someone comes at you with what seems like a completely unreasonable complaint, it's easy to try to shut them down. And I know myself and various other board game designers or publishers and whatnot have taken that stance. The short version is that while it's morally right, if you want to call it that way, it doesn't tend to work out well for you. People tend to expect more, and rightfully so, from the business side of things. If someone's being a jerk, ignore them. If someone's having an issue, just politely explain it. Don't treat them the way they're treating you. But in terms of the issues, it always has been a vocal minority. So to be clear, like it's never like we've had like just mass people who didn't like us. We've always had vocal minorities, and those have gone away as time goes on. Part of that was our first years, and I touched upon this earlier in the call. But in our early years, I didn't sit there and say, "Hey, I'm a business, trade with me." I just said, "Hey, I'm trading, and your games are worth less than mine, and I won't negotiate past this term." So people just were looking at a brick wall of someone who was presenting a proposition that they didn't necessarily agree with, and that seemed unfair. They didn't. I mean, I wasn't being as blunt and as obvious as I am nowadays, where I'm like, "Hey guys, I have a business, we have a warehouse, we
Well,
have
and
shipping
he kept his
expenses."
board game geek user ID, so it wasn't as apparent to the counterparty that it's now a business. Yesterday I was
Yeah,
Alex, and today I'm a business.
Board Game Co. Yeah, and that gap alone just a huge part of it, because yes,
Mhm.
we have huge costs. I mean, we pay more for shipping than most people make in a year. I mean, like we have expenses that we have to cover, and if you want us to be here and to provide this service, there has to actually be a reason we're doing it. I'm not just trying to get the next copy of Le Havre, although Le Havre is a great game. I'm trying to actually build a business and a profit margin, and that requires an infrastructure and it requires an incentive. The incentive is the fact that we're doing this deal. So that most of the earlier complaints were about that lack of transparency, about the fact that I remember one particular incident where we had a guy who I had him conduct a three-way trade, basically, where he shipped a game to someone else, and the net result of everything was I basically traded a $20 game for like an $80 game, and he was totally fine with that until he found out later that that's what happened. So
Mhm.
then, and which is both reasonable and unreasonable. It's unreasonable from the stance of, if you were happy with the trade, who cares that I made money with it? Now that you found out I made money, suddenly it's a problem. The flip side is people don't always want to feel taken advantage of. Like, people understand that when I go on Amazon and I buy something for $30, whatever it is, no big deal. But if you go on Amazon and you find a deal on something and you buy 10 of them and then you sell it to me and you made a profit and you didn't really tell me, like, there's a little element. It's irrational, but there's an element of feeling betrayed. Like, you didn't tell me you're a business. You didn't tell me you're in this to make money.
But I think
Uh,
to a fault, our site and certainly we are very upfront about this imbalance. You
now
can
we
go
are.
on, yeah. Now we are on the website. I mean, what are the stats? Thumbs up, thumbs down that we have out there. Do
Oh, I
you?
mean, it's hard to know because we switched to a new profile. So like we switched all our feedback and comments over, but like on a new profile, we have over 1,000 positives and we have like one negative. And again, part of that and that's a shift. Part of that is we've tried being more responsive. We constantly try to adjust to public opinion, and not from a stance of like bending over and just saying, yeah, you're right. But there always are two sides of the story. And while I often think that our side is potentially underrepresented, at the end of the day, if you want people to come back, you have to be conscious of both. It's
Sure.
not their job to understand me; it's my job to understand them. And so that's those are more the early days complaints.
But I think it's also important to point out that this is algorithmic. It's not like you're sitting there and deciding on a case by case. The business is
Well,
way
so
beyond.
that leads to the second thing, which is that we do still get complaints, but again, thankfully they're fewer, they're rarer. But there are people who feel that we undervalue the stuff. And the short version, and I address this in a whole blog post on our site. But one of the things people have they has to put in numbers. there are more people trying to trade away the games that are yesterday's games. And there are far fewer people trading away, let's say, Quacks of Quedlinburg or any whatever the newest hotness is. But that inherently that leads to a disconnect where we say, oh, if you're trading us, I don't know what's an old game on my shelf. If you're trading us
Genoa.
Terra, or Flashpoint Fire Rescue, okay, great game, but it's an older game. Then yeah, we'll only offer like 17 points or whatever it is we offer. But if you want, let's see, a new game, if you want Baron Park, well, we're asking a lot more. And so people just look at the retail value sometimes and say, well, they're both $30 on Cool Stuff Inc. So why, like, it's completely unfair and irrational that you're treating one as vastly higher than the other. And I'm like, yeah, because it's a different currency. If you
We
want
know
to
the
buy it,
market. We know the market. It's that simple.
we know the market. We're looking at the trading market. We're doing it based off trade demand. There are thousands of people or hundreds of people that want that copy of Baron Park, and there are far fewer people that want the copy of Flashpoint. So if we want to value them the same, we'll quickly end up with a warehouse full of yesterday's stock and nothing that people actually want because we weren't using the right currency of trading. But at the end of the day, while we can explain it, and to any person I can go through it and explain it, it doesn't mean you have to trade with us. It just means there's a rationale for this. Sometimes these people see the numbers and think they're getting ripped off and they just walk away, and they can be left with a negative taste in their mouth before we really have a chance to say, listen, it's just math, it's just data, it's a system that works for us. If it doesn't work for you, totally get it. Like, it's not no harm, no foul. And the flip side, by the way, is we have people take advantage in the reverse direction. We have people who trade us the newest, hottest stuff and then load their shelves with like hundreds of dollars of older games. Sometimes they walk away with getting a better monetary value, and we're cool with that because someone else is going to take that new hot stuff. Meaning it works for us and works for them. It's a win-win, which is the whole point of trading. The whole point is to engage in a win-win. It's not. It's a mutual
In fact,
transaction.
we also have a third type of person who uses our credit system where they just send in games without taking anything, waiting for
Yep.
us to get in things that we don't have, but they know based on our track record that things will cycle through our system. So they just clear their shelves out to make whomever happy. On one shelf, and just wait.
And the flip side of all this is like, I mean, at the end of the day, like, while we do get people who are unhappy here and there, like Dan said, 75% of our business is repeat business. I mean, I think something I have to look at the current data, but something like 16-17% of trades conducted on Board Game Geek go through us, and more than that, it's closer to like 45% of the number of titles traded on Board Game Geek go through us. So like 45% of the number of games traded on Board Game Geek, domestically, are going through us. I mean, like, at the end of the day, we're clearly providing a service that people benefit from, and we love being in this position. If you guys could just buy some more games and actually enable me to quit my job, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But until then, this where we are right now is it's a great place to be. It's a growing business. It's a business that clearly has a target audience and an audience that sees our value. Yes, there are hiccups. Yes, there are bumps. We're constantly trying to address them and grow in whatever we can. But yeah, it's a good place to be.
Now, are you guys afraid of Miniature Market Cool Stuff just suddenly opening up a used part of their website?
Nope.
So let me try to explain that. Maybe initially there might have been concern, but where we're holding now is, let's assume that you had $500,000 that you wanted to spend on thousands of games to start with. Okay, so that you would be attractive to lots of people all over the world. The trick in this business is in the software, which allows us to every single day trade down that stack and increase it with higher quality material every day. And so we've been doing it for 5 years, and it's not something that we're necessarily proud of, but our pile of games has continued to grow even as our trading volume and our sales have continued to grow. So that do you hear what I'm saying? These are different flywheels going on. More and more people are trading more and more games, and more people are buying more and more games, and yet our inventory is still growing with extremely high quality games. Like, we're not taking games that are not desirable. We ruthlessly manage.
And it's more than just that. And that's a big part of it. But like, it's the number of bumps in the road when it comes to dealing with used games and not just new games. This would be a whole different discussion if we're talking about new games. I mean, if you look around, like for instance, let's say clothing. Clothing's a good example. There are more and more stores opening up that model with clothes, because with clothes it's pretty easy. You take a look at it and you're done. but there's no inventorying, that the 1,400 pieces there are in a copy of Caverna or whatever it is that goes on in clothing. Used games are a much messier business. I mean, you have to ask yourself, let's take Amazon. Amazon's got endless capital, right? But at the end of the day, when you return something to Amazon, they don't treat it like a used product. They box it up, put it on this, they put on these giant pallets, and they sell them to other people to deal with them. They're basically saying, we don't want this headache. We don't want the headache of a used product. We don't want to make sure that what you sent back is actually legit. We literally just box it up. We sell it at a fraction of the MSRP. And by the way, if anyone wants, you can actually go online and buy these yourself. They'll be expensive pallets, but you can buy like $4,000 worth of MSRP of technology of headphones for $300. You buy it at pennies in the dollar, but what you get is a complete toss-up. It's who knows what it is. And so that headache, it exists for a reason. It exists. We spent 4 years not taking a paycheck out of this business because we were trying to get past that headache, and we finally did. But is it possible another company will come along and say, hey, we're interested in getting into this? It looks like there's a real market here. It's possible, but I'm not really worried about it.
It's a slugfest. It's a real slugfest.
It's a slugfest. We're working our way through it. We're always working our way through it. We're always improving and trying to iterate. But it's not an easy place to say, let me invest money and get a return. It's a niche we found, and we want to be in this business because we love games. Dan and I are people who sit there and read rule books when we're bored.
Just for fun.
We're like, oh, hey, I'm bored. Cool. Let's just read a rule book. So we love the idea of being able to take a paycheck and to pay for my bills and my kids and this and that through something that I love is so appealing to me. But if you're interested in actually making money, I recommend looking elsewhere. Only do this because you love it. And hopefully, yes, I'm not saying you won't make money. You can make money in this hobby, but it's not the fastest and easiest way to do so.
Great. I don't know if I have any other questions. Do you guys have things you want to share about your business or your brand with any of the users that are listening?
I actually have to apologize and run. I'm way past a hard stop, and so I have to run. But Alex, please feel free to go ahead and talk about the secret sauce or whatever you feel like the world needs to know.
Sure,
really appreciate.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
Take care.
Yeah, so I don't have an easy or quick answer to that. It is a big part of, I guess, in terms of sharing. I would say that we've covered a lot of things I would want to share, which is there are multiple things going on here. Yes, we're a business. Yes, we're here to make money. Yes, we can grow. Yes, we can learn. Yes, we're trying to. There's a real person. There's real people behind this operation on all sides of things. Whenever we mess up, we're trying to grow. We're trying to improve. Give us your feedback. Be polite with us. We'll happily refund. Work with you. Like it's. Many different things in this industry are true, but like the first is like there are real people on all sides of everything. And the flip side is we also want your feedback on what things we can do that make the process easier and more streamlined for you. We have our own ideas and we are implementing them slowly but surely. But if there's something that someone has a thought like, oh hey, it would be cool in an app. It would be super cool if I could do X, Y, and Z. Well, hopefully we thought of it already and we have it on our roadmap. If we don't, then tell us. We want to be able to. The reason we're doing this is, and the reason we keep doing this is because you keep coming back to us, and that's both a testament to you and again coming back to us, and a testament to the value we're providing. But we want to keep doing that. So anything anyone ever wants to tell us, I love it. Okay, I don't get them often enough, but I occasionally get emails saying, oh, I love your app, but X. I love those emails. We either have it on our roadmap or we add it to our roadmap. But listen, we're all trying to have fun here. And if you can help us have fun while helping you get features you want, it's a mutual win-win.
Very cool. Now, if people want to find you on social media or contact you through email, what's the best for that?
Sure. So the best one is if you hop to our website, boardgameco.com. There's a contact us forum. You'll be taken care of that way. You can email me directly at any point at alex@boardgameco.com. If you go through the website, it'll go to someone else. But if you ever want to escalate things directly to me, feel free. We're small enough we can still do that. Eventually, hopefully, I won't be able to, but for right now, I'm still able to. You can also reach us on Board Game Geek. Our account is Board Game Co. You can find us on Facebook, Board Game Co. You're seeing a trend here. Mm-hmm. Instagram, frustratingly, is one of the things where we actually have some weird underscore thing going on because someone else got there first. So it's still Board Game Co., but it's like an underscore there. But yeah, we're pretty easy to find. If you have any questions, we're here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming and chatting with me, Alex. It's been great hearing your story and love it. So Thanks for having.
Likewise, wishing you all the best, Trent. Board Game Atlas has been great so far. Board game taking over board game prices. It's fun stuff on both sides.
Yeah, very cool. All right.
Have a good one. Thank you.